Hi, in this presentation, we're going to be covering CRS Tax Advanced. If you are not ready for the advanced portion, there is an Intro to CRS Tax presentation available. Now, as you can see, I'm already logged into Paragon, and to get started with this CRS Tax Advanced class, at the top, we have our navigation bar. And in that navigation bar, we have the tax button. By clicking on the tax button, we do have four options available to us here in Paragon. There are three buttons that are integrated into Paragon, and then the fourth button here, CRS Data Tax Search, will take you into the CRS Data Tax program. You can also get to that program from your dashboard by clicking on CRS Data. But from here, we're going to go over these buttons. Starting with CRS Data Tax Autofill. For those of you who are looking to input a listing into Paragon here, you can simply click on CRS Data Tax Autofill. And we can start by pulling some of the information from the tax records and putting it into our listing. All you need to do is enter your county. For me, it's San Diego. And then you will enter enough information to find the listing. If you don't have the tax ID, you can enter the address. We just need the street number and the street name. Now you'll notice I didn't have to fill out the full street name. We can type in half of it, and I was still able to find the property. Now, by clicking search, this will execute a list where you can select the property. And again, from this list, we'll check the box next to the property that we want. And at the top, we will hit autofill. That autofill will then allow you to select the class of your property. And that starts the listing input process. Really quick and easy. Here on the autofill data, it will show you a list of the data that will be input if you hit save. If there's something here that you don't agree with, you may uncheck it and enter it manually. Once I hit save, that information has been entered, and now I'm ready to move on with inputting that listing. So there's the tax autofill option from the tax button. Next, when we click on the tax button, there's a My Property Watch. Now, My Property Watch allows you to watch property for any reason. Now, for you to watch that property, you do have to select the property from a map here in Paragon and click the Watch Property button. So from the home page, I have my quick search here. I'll click on Mapping. That opens up a map to wherever my office is located. But remember, you can zoom out, zoom in to wherever you want. So if I did want to zoom into a different area, we'll zoom in, and you just simply click on any parcel that you would like to watch. Once I click on the parcel, we have a side panel with listing information or property information. And there is our Watch Property button. Once you click the Watch Property button, you are now watching that property. And to remove it, you can remove it from here or from the Watch Property button in the tax. So now that I'm watching this property, I'll close the map out. And then across the top, if we click on Tax again, there is My Property Watch. By clicking on My Property Watch, we have a list of all the properties I am currently watching. If there's something here that I would like to remove, we can check the box next to it and hit Remove Watch. You also can export that list into a spreadsheet if you needed to. Now, your other option is My Property Watch Alerts. So the whole reason for watching these properties is to stay up to date on what's going on with the property. In the alerts, you will only see the properties that have had updates or alerts. So the type of alerts that you will see here are things like value change, change in ownership, tax delinquency. I'm able to stay up to date again on all the properties that I'm watching. Remember, in My Property Watch alerts, you will not see all the properties that you are watching, only the ones that have had an alert. Real simple. And there's your My Property Watch. Now, the fourth button is the actual CRS Data Tax Search. So when I click on CRS Data Tax Search, that takes me to my CRS homepage. And if you have seen the intro to CRS Tax, you have already covered the property search, the foreclosure search, the settings, and the basic searching here. What we are going to start with is advanced search and map search. By clicking on Advanced Search in Map Search, we get all of our advanced options here. Just like before, you can start with your county. I can select up to 4 counties here, but by default, I still just have San Diego. To the right, we have saved criteria. So if you were to perform a search here, there's a list of all the fields you can enter, and we'll get back to that. But at the bottom, you have the ability to save the criteria. That saved criteria will be here. Now, again, that's saving the search, just the criteria that you've entered. The next option that I see here are my saved results. So once I've executed a search, if I would like to save those properties that have retrieved in my search, we'll give it a save, and they'll be available here under my saved results. We'll show that on the next page when we get to the results. Now below those, we have search by map. So instead of putting in a location, I can use the map to perform my search. Some of the basic things you have here on the map is the zoom in and zoom out, plus to zoom in, negative to zoom out. You have a directional pad. When you hover over the settings wheel, you can change the view from a road to an aerial to a street side view. If you do street side, you'll take the little blue guy and drop the little blue guy anywhere there is a blue line, and that allows you to walk about the neighborhood. Now, to get back to your map, you will just simply hit the X in the top right-hand corner of the map, and that brings us right back. Below the settings wheel, we have a search button. It's just a little magnifying glass here. And this will allow you to draw a shape based on a polygon, rectangle, radius, or freehand. There is a limitation on these different shapes. So for example, if I do a polygon, to start a polygon, you just click, you move around to your next point, and then you click again. So as I continue to click, it looks like we're perfectly fine. But once you pass 20 square miles, you'll notice that my distance turns red here. Once that distance is red, you can no longer perform the search. So you have to be under 20 square miles, and then we can finish the search here. So there's my polygon shape. To get rid of this shape, I can hover over the distance, and I can move the shape or delete it. Same thing applies with the rest of them. With a rectangle, it's a click to start, move out, click to stop. Same thing with a radius. Click to start. There's no holding and dragging involved. Move out and click to stop. Real simple. And with the freehand, you do have to hold and drag. So I'm just going to hold, drag, and once I let go, that finishes my shape. Really easy. So now I can use that location and the search fields below to perform the search. Now let's get rid of this. Below the search option, you also have a measuring tool. Now with this measuring tool, I can move into any area. Let's move into a more residential area here. And I can click on parcel. That will allow me to click on any parcel and do a full measurement. I also can place the latitude and longitude, the lat long. When we click here, there's the lat long of my location. Let's delete that. We also have distance. So if you'd like to, you can measure the distance. Maybe I want to see how long this whole block is. And then last but not least, you have the ability to measure an area. Let's say my client was going to purchase 2 parcels. What I can do here is I can measure both parcels to see how much they are together. You would do a way better job than me. This is just a quick shape for the presentation. And there is our distance. Again, to get rid of this, you just hover over the distance and we will hit delete. Now that's some of the basic functionality of the map. If you click View Larger Map here, the blue View Larger Map button, this will give you a larger view of the map with the same tools down the right-hand side. But if you look down the left-hand side, we have search filters. So if I want to see a bigger map, and also put in my filters so that I can see that data on the map, this is how we would do so. Here are some of the search filters. You have date ranges. You can search by owner name, owner occupancy, vacant land, acreage, and so on, bedrooms, bathrooms. But below that, we have CRS map layers. So to get rid of these filters, I'll collapse them just by clicking on the label, and I will expand the map layers by clicking on that label. And another thing that you can see here is the parcel. That's turned on. If I zoom in close enough, I can now see the parcel lines just like we did before. And you're allowed to click on any parcel and get information. So whatever's going on with that property will show right there in the parcel. Now, for those of you who don't want to see it, again, you can just turn it off, on and off. The next thing that we can see here is recent sales. You'll notice that some of these layers, as we click on them, will require you to either zoom in or zoom out to see them better. When it comes to recent sales, you should be in close enough to see the parcels. So I'll go in just a tad bit more. And here on recent sales, we can see recent sales on up to 60 months back. If I were to click on 60 months, here are all the parcels that have sold in the past 60 months. Each parcel that has sold is shaded in. And to understand what those colors represent, here at the bottom, we have a legend. They're just price ranges. So anything shaded in this blue color is from 605,000 to 819,000. Okay, so those are your available ranges. Next, we have school information. Now, once you click on school information, this is one of those that you may want to zoom out just a tad, just depending on what you're looking for. If I turn on school zones, I'm able to see all the school zones and the school locations. Really cool. After school information, you have labels. You'll notice that these are grayed out because that causes me to zoom in. We need to zoom in closer. And everything that you see here can be turned on. I can turn on bedrooms and bathrooms, last sale price, APN, property address, owner name, system calculated acreage, deeded calculated acreage. Again, all of that is available here to turn on if you'd like to. So I will not turn those on. Let's turn them off. Now, under labels, we have listings. So if you would like to see MLS data here, you can just simply click on listings, and I can turn on for sale. We can turn on sold, pending, expired, and so on. And another legend will appear here across the bottom, letting you know what each little house represents. So I will turn those listings off. Next, we have foreclosures. Remember, we do have a foreclosures button that I just showed you a moment ago. The foreclosures that you see here are properties that have had a foreclosure stage at some point. It isn't necessarily a current foreclosure. If you were to zoom in and you click on the parcel, you're able to see the type of foreclosure. And if you click on the button, you'll get the foreclosure information, which will show the date that the foreclosure took place. To get more accurate foreclosure data, you will want to run a foreclosure search. So let's close that out. Next, we have our flood zones. So if you would like to see all the different flood zones here, we'll turn that layer on. Then you have a topography map. So if you would like to see all the different terrain, we can turn that on as well. Then we have zip code boundaries. So we can turn on zip code boundaries. And below that is where we have our other layers that can turn on other cool things, such as airfields. So here are all the airfields. You also can turn on airport noise to see where you will hear the noise from those airfields. There's bike route options. Now you would notice that I'm turning those off as I turn them on as well, because you can turn them all on together, but it will clog up the map. You have city limits, which is another helpful tool. If you're looking to find out if it's incorporated or unincorporated, this is a quick way to see it. If it's shaded in, it's incorporated. If it's not shaded in, it's unincorporated. Then you have county limits. You have the assessor book. You also have Thomas Brothers. And that's it for other layers. So last but not least, we have transit routes. We can turn on trolley routes, coaster and sprinter routes, bus routes, and then we can turn on all the stops for each trolley, coaster, and bus. Again, really helpful. And there's your expanded map. Again, you're not required to use the map. It's just available to you if you like to. So now again, if you start with the advanced search, you have that map where you can use the map from here, or we can turn on view large map, or you can bypass the map altogether and just put in information based upon your location. So the first section we have here in the advanced search is search by location. Again, you're not required to enter every field. Just enter whatever you would like to perform your search. If I only wanted a zip code or a city, I could have done so. For me, I will do a zip code, and then we'll move on. You will also notice that every section has a submit button. You do not want to hit submit until you're ready to execute the search. That submit button is there for convenience. So instead of entering my information and scrolling to the very bottom to execute the search, I can execute the search after each section. Now, I don't only want a zip code, so I'll scroll down to the next section, and we have the ability to search by property value. So from there, I'll put in a time frame. I can put in last sale price, deed book, deed page, date of last sale. If there's a transfer date, I'll say sales within the last 2 years. Then as I continue to scroll down, remember there's a submit button. We don't want to click it. We now have search by property characteristics. I can choose a property type. I want residential. Remember in the tax records, you have everything. So it could be a car wash. It could be a gas station. So I want residential. You have other filters here, improvement type, land use, whatever you would like to enter. For me, I just wanted residential, and I'll continue to scroll down. Next, we have search by owner profile. So I can do all owners, owner occupied, or if I choose absentee owner, I can now choose whether the owner is in state or out of state. I can be specific by typing in an owner name, address, city, zip, completely up to you. And then last but not least, you can search by listing. So if these properties were on the MLS and you want to choose an MLS status, you're more than welcome to, or enter MLS numbers. Now I've entered everything I wanted, so I can hit any of these submit buttons, doesn't matter. But before we do that, again, you can save the criteria. If this is a search that I would like to run often, I can just give it a name. Name the search. Okay. And it has been successfully saved. And there it is. Name the search. Really simple. Now, it didn't remove anything. All the information is still there. So all I have to do is simply hit submit. Once I hit submit, we have a list of all of my properties. There's 39 properties matching my criteria. But if you would like to make changes down the left-hand side, you can go back to search and start the search all over. You can pull up any of your saved results, or you can change any of the data that is available here. All of the fields aren't available here. So if you would like to change more fields, you can go back to search. Again, as I continue to scroll down, here is a list of all the available fields. If you made any changes, you will hit update results, and that will then be reflected in your list of properties. Now, this was covered in the intro class, but just to touch on it again, you have your legend, which will tell you what each one of these symbols represent. You can also hit save results if you would like to save these 39 listings or properties. And then below that, you have your different views. You have your map view, or we can go back to the list view. You have your simple results view, or you have a custom results view. Now that custom results view was modified in your settings. So if you did want to make any changes to your custom results, you can just simply click on settings. And from here, we have custom results list. From the custom results list, once you click on it, all you're doing is you're scrolling down and you're checking everything that you would like to see in your custom results. You also can choose your default. My default is a simple view, but as you were able to see, the custom view was still available. If I want my custom view available as the default, we would just click the radio button here. Now, I don't want to make any changes, but I could just by checking the box next to anything. I can click, hold, drag on the right-hand side to put it into any order. And then at the bottom, I will hit save. Now I'm comfortable with everything I have, so I'll hit back to previous page, which takes me back to the results. And there you have it, real simple to run a search, an advanced search. Next, once we've ran that advanced search, I can click on any property and I will get the full report of that property. From that report, if you look across the top, we have comparables. Now remember, the property report was covered in detail in the Intro to CRS Tax class. So we are going to move on to the comparables. And once you click on comparables, you have a CMA client report or a quick CMA. With this CMA client report, I can click on the CMA client report and it automatically should give me comps. But due to the property being such a big property here, we didn't get any comps. We can still make changes to get comps, or we can just jump back and grab another property. Okay, so I'll go back to the property report and then I'll just hit next. And we can do the same thing. See how easy that was? Now I have 13 comps. So if you ever ran into that issue like I just ran into where we didn't get any comps, I could have made modifications to get more comps, but for the sake of the presentation, I just chose a different property. From here, we can go to saved criteria to pull up any saved criteria. I already have my location, but if you wanted to, you could put in other additional locations. Under value, I can modify the value. So list price, the last date of sale. And then here we have the characteristics. So right now I have 13 comps, but it's because we're going one below and one above when it comes to my bedroom. This is where you can make those modifications to get the amount of comps that you would like to see. So if I click on the 3 here, and I'm still on 13 comps. If I hit the 5, we are down to 2 comps. So for those of you who want to see more comps, we may be better off if we stick with the 4 to 5 on the bedrooms. Adding the 3 didn't affect our comp report, but removing the 5 did. And you'll also notice that the subject property has an S on it. So when it comes to bathrooms, the subject property has 4 bathrooms. If I turn these off, we're back down to the 2 comps. So let's add the 5. Really simple. A couple other things you can do here is what's the difference in total building square footage? I have it set to 20%. I can drop that to 15%. And now I'm down to 9 comps, which also helps me. I'm getting closer to what my subject property has. Now, if we continue to scroll down, there's other fields that you can modify if need be. But again, for the sake of the presentation, we will move on to MLS data. If you wanted to bring in specific MLS statuses, you're more than welcome to. But I want everything, whether it was on the MLS or sold through the tax records. Then here we have the distance. Right now, I'm going zero point 0.7 miles from my subject property. I can slide this to a distance that I'm more comfortable with, maybe a mile. By doing a mile, we got an extra comp or extra 2 comps. We started out with 9 and now we're up to 11. Before we hit create report, there's other options here. We're currently looking at a preview. You can also turn it to different views. We have the column view. You have the map view, where we still have the same data down the left-hand side, but we're able to see the properties on the map. Then we also have the list view. Okay. Now with that list view, we still see the same data down the left-hand side, listings on the map. And as we continue to scroll down, here are those right here in a list view. So completely up to you which view you would like to see. I'll go back to the original view, which was the column view. And there we are. Now to go below this line before we click on create report, we have legend. This legend will tell you what each one of these symbols represent. And then down the left-hand side, when we were talking about these comps, we didn't mention that that's where the prices came from. We have a price here, average cost per square foot. If you don't want to use that, you can click on the X. House price index, same thing. Average sales price slash tax assessment ratio. And you also can add in your own suggested property value. I'll just put in a number just to show you what that looks like. And there's my suggested value. Then below, it'll show the sale price, low, median, and high. And a very important button, learn more about these values. It is a great idea for you to click on that button because this button will break down what these values represent. Some of you may have been wondering, hey, Ricky, what is the average cost per square foot? They explain here and show you all the numbers to get there here. Same thing here on house price index. Right below, they explain it and then show the values to the right. And then also with average sales price slash tax assessment ratio, we're here. So all the values that you may be looking for are here. Average sales price based on the comps. I can see it there. So that is the market value calculations. That's what these different prices represent. And then you're also able to take a look at each comp side by side. Here we have my subject property, which is labeled. But if you would like to see more, you can click the arrows here at the bottom to flip through. And also you have the ability to change your mind. If I'm taking a look here at the data, I can see they have more than I do. The green arrow pointing up indicates they have more than I do. The red arrow pointing down indicates it's less than mine. So if by looking at this data, I decide I don't want to use this property, we can click on the menu and I can see a full property report to get more information, or I can remove the comp altogether. Now I'm okay with everything that I see here. So now it's time for me to create my report. So when I click create report, how quick and easy was that? Real simple, the report has already been created. Now I can see the address. If I wanted to, I can add a client. I can also edit the report. If there's any pages that you don't want down the left-hand side, you just simply click on the X. If you're unsure if it's a report that you want, just click on it and see what it looks like. I like them, so I'll keep them all. Jumping back out here, I can also view the report. Simply by clicking on the view button, we're able to go page by page to look at the full CMA. Really easy. There's that market value calculation. Okay, so we want to make sure that's there so it explains those prices. Now, when I hit back to comps, we also have the ability to email this out. We can download it, see the day that it expires, and we can remove it if we no longer need it. There you are, really simple. There are still an option to see the different views if you click here. But if we go back to create report, we still have all the information that we had without any changes. There it is, real simple way to create comparables right here in CRS. Next to the comparables button, we have our prospecting. This is our power prospecting. You can get to power prospecting from the home page, practically any page. You just simply click on the prospecting tab, which will still give you the ability to choose a different county, up to 4, pull up any saved criteria. Now, the saved criteria that you see here is for power prospecting. The reason why that is different is because there are different filters here. If I scroll down past the map, here is my prospecting criteria. Don't be alarmed. Let's remove some of this. Don't be alarmed if yours looks different than mine. You are responsible for all the fields that you see here. So here at the bottom, if I want to adjust the fields that I see here, just simply click on Edit Criteria. You can clear the search criteria. You can save the search criteria. But again, if I click on Edit, that will take me to my settings. You also could have gotten here by going to Settings in the top right-hand corner, but this is just a quicker way because it takes you directly to where we can edit the criteria. If you did go through the Settings button, you would just have to click on Edit Prospecting Criteria, which will give you the prospecting criteria search field by category. So I can open tax and assessment, and I can choose any of these fields that I want to add to my search criteria. Everything that has a check is over here on the right-hand side under my selected criteria. I can also remove it from here or put it into any order by clicking and dragging from here. So you have all your categories again, characteristics, you have foreclosure information, listing information, and so on. Now by hitting save, what this allows me to do is to go back to my previous page and perform a power prospecting search. With this search, I can prospect any area I want, any way I want to do it. So I want to remove the street name and the zip code. Or actually, let's keep the zip code. Let's do 92130. And I just want to see anyone who owns a property in this zip code, but you live in Arizona. Once I hit submit, I get 65 properties meeting this criteria. If I scroll down, I have a full list of those properties, and I'm able to proceed to labels and exports if I would like to export them. Remember, there are check marks here. Those check marks will allow you to remove the checked property, keep only the checked properties, and then you have another button here that will allow you to edit the columns. So just like we did with the criteria, you can open up each category and you can add or remove any fields that you want to see in the columns. Again, once we hit save, we are now ready to go. Now, for those of you who would like to export it, we'll simply click on Proceed to Labels and Exports, and you decide how you would like your labels/exports to look by checking the boxes here. You do get 5,000 per month. I've used 7 already. So I have 4,993. Now, when it comes to refining your records, you can skip records with no zip code. I want it to go to a property. I don't want it to go to a PO box, so I said skip records with no +4. Remove exact duplicates. For the addresses, these are going to individuals, so I'll put first name first, and I want it to go to the owner's address. Now, if we were doing exports, you can choose your export based on the product that you're using. If you're doing Excel, I can do just addresses to Excel, just addresses to comma separated text, or property data to Excel, property data to comma separated text. And for those of you who are using other programs that are available here, you can select that program as well. If you don't select one of these, it is going to the default, which is the selected columns that I had on my results. At that point, you will simply click Export Files, and you're ready to go. As we scroll down, I also have the ability to create labels. And you're doing the same thing. You're just checking the boxes that you would like to include. Then you are choosing your label paper that you have and the document format. Once you've done that, the last portion is to choose where to start on that label paper. If I've used the first 3 or 4, I'll tell the system start at label 5. These first 4 are blank. And then at that point, I would simply hit create labels. And there you have it, real simple and easy. Now, if I hit step back, that brings me back to my power prospecting page. And then we'll just go back to the property search and we'll pull up the same property that we just clicked on. Now, the reason why I did that is because after prospecting from a property report, you have facts and figures. These are different reports that you can run here. By clicking on facts and figures, I have an area sales detail report. And again, you're just filling it out based upon what you would like to see. I want to see San Diego County. I don't care about any APNs or ranges or subdivisions. Just show me everything in the county from the first till now. Once I hit submit, here's my area sales detail report. It lets me know there's 803 properties matching my criteria. And then I get a sales summary. Quick breakdown here. So on each APN, I'm getting a breakdown. Really cool. Then you have area sales trend report. Now this is different because you have to choose step 1, your county, step 2, residential, commercial, or other. Step 3, it brings in the address that we're on, and I can do a radius around that property or do the whole zip code. Once I hit submit, here's an area sales trend report for this zip code. You see it outlines it for you on the map, and then it shows you all the data, the search results, and you get date range and price ranges. Then we have the median sell price, median percent and change, the total sales, number of properties, and we have the ability to email, save, or print. The next report I would like to show is the area statistics. Here in the area statistics, it is showing you based on the footprint a mile range. We're doing 1 mile, 3, and 5. There are different variations of blue. The darker one is the closest one, and it gets lighter as it moves out. Now, as we scroll down, you will see all of those values here. So based on 1 mile, 3, and 5, we have sale price data, assessment price data, and then we have the same information for commercial property. Also under facts and figures, you have a demographics report, which is integrated into Paragon. Whenever you're looking at a listing, you can click on the demographics button and it will bring up this exact report based on that property. Now, this report is based on the property that we were working with earlier. It shows the area that the demographics will cover, and then below will be all the demographic data. So we have population profile, total population, socioeconomic profile, you have household income, education. Remember, these sections can be collapsed or minimized if you don't want to see them by simply clicking the arrow. And then as we scroll down, we get more demographic data. Now, after demographics, you have the ability to get driving directions. That gives me a little pop-up here where we can get driving directions from Bing. You also can get a school report. That school report is coming from a third party, so when you click on it, it will open up in a new window. And then last but not least, we have subdivision info. If the subdivision isn't defined here, we can always find a different property just to show. subdivision info, and there's your subdivision. So once we scroll down, we get to see the sales history, the subdivision sales data, a lot of good information here based upon that subdivision. And there you are. Now that actually does complete my presentation on CRS Tax Advance. Thank you for attending.